The Victorian era marked a significant juncture in history, defined by a burgeoning state, thriving economy, and Britain's unrivaled global dominance. However, amidst this grandeur, the era is often remembered for its grim realities. Impoverished children toiling in factories and mines for endless hours, cities cloaked in suffocating smog from overcrowding, and ominous workhouses governed by harsh overseers. Shadowed by tales of violent criminals lurking in the alleys, these haunting images paint a stark portrait of Victorian life. So let's explore the dark side of Victorian-era social life. Before we start, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons. During this era of peace and prosperity, societal issues persisted within the intricate social fabric. Divided into upper, middle, and lower classes, the social hierarchy delineated opportunities and constraints. The privileged upper class, comprising royalty, officers, lords, and wealthy business owners, thrived on investments and land ownership, while the burgeoning middle class, known as the bourgeoisie, flourished with skilled occupations driven by urbanization and economic expansion. However, beneath these layers lay the working class, enduring harsh conditions and limited resources, often resorting to drugs and precarious living situations. Meanwhile, the underclass, including impoverished orphans and marginalized women, faced systemic challenges, leading to legislative responses, fueling feminist activism for equitable treatment. Amidst the backdrop of industrial progress, disparities deepened within the stratified society of the time. The middle class burgeoned with skilled laborers seizing opportunities in burgeoning industries, while the working class grappled with grueling conditions and scant resources, resorting to substances to alleviate their plight. Concurrently, the underclass, comprising the destitute and marginalized, navigated systemic hurdles, prompting legislative interventions like the Contagious Diseases Act, which incited feminist agitation for gender equity. Eventually, legislative reforms like the Criminal Law Amendment Act aimed to address injustices, signaling a nascent shift towards a more equitable societal paradigm. Double standard. Today, the term Victorian often suggests a prudish denial of sexuality, hypocritically intertwined with frequent discussions of it, thinly disguised as cautionary tales. There is validity to both aspects of this stereotype. Some educated Victorians delved extensively into the topic of sex, producing works ranging from pornography to medical dissertations and psychological analyses. However, the majority maintained a strict silence on the subject. Particularly, respectable middle-class women took pride in their ignorance about their own bodies and childbirth. Furthermore, Victorian society operated under a sexual double standard that remained largely unquestioned until the period's end. According to this double standard, men were deemed to crave and require sex, while women were portrayed as devoid of sexual desire and obligated to engage in it solely to gratify their husbands. Despite the evident contradictions with the realities of a society grappling with prostitution, sexually transmitted diseases, women's sexual agency, and same-sex desires, these standards held considerable sway. Child labour. During the Victorian age, a surge in births coincided with rapid industrialization, propelling England's population growth. The expanding society demanded labour from both adults and children, leading to a grim reality where children toiled in grueling occupations such as coal mining, chimney sweeping, and domestic service. The advent of the Industrial Revolution further exacerbated this plight, with children even forced into hazardous roles, like railroad workers. Child labour emerged as a pervasive issue in the early 1800s, exacerbated by the neglect of working conditions by the upper class and government prioritization of luxury over labor protection. The most egregious exploitation occurred in coal mines, where children endured long hours in perilous conditions, resulting in respiratory ailments and frequent disasters. It wasn't until decades later, spurred by the efforts of reformers, that action was taken. The establishment of organizations like the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children in 1875 marked a turning point, heralding a new era of social reform and rescuing countless children from lives of suffering and hardship. Bastardy. In English society during the period of population expansion, the term illegitimacy gained prominence, particularly among the lower class, where poverty and unstable marriages made it challenging for parents to support and account for their children. Children born out of wedlock faced significant hardships, often relegated to unstable home environments and deprived of equal educational opportunities. The Bastardy Clause, embodied in the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834, exacerbated these challenges by denying relief to unwed mothers, compelling them and their fatherless children into workhouses with dire conditions, despite some viewing it as a means of providing basic necessities and schooling. As impoverished women struggled to support their offspring, many resorted to working as servants, leaving their children in the care of baby farmers for a fee. However, industrialization and urbanization transformed the dynamics of childcare, leading to a reliance on paid fosterage in distant villages and towns, where conditions were perceived to be safer. Yet, this separation often resulted in neglect and prolonged child labor, underscoring the enduring hardships faced by illegitimate children in Victorian society. Women. Queen Victoria, reigning from 1837 until her death in 1901, epitomized an ideal of femininity centered around family, motherhood, and respectability. Alongside her husband Albert and their numerous children, she symbolized late 19th century middle-class domestic life, reinforcing the notion that a woman's primary duties revolved around nurturing her family and maintaining the household. During this era, societal norms sharply defined the roles of men and women, promoting the concept of separate spheres. Men increasingly commuted to workplaces, while women remained at home to manage domestic affairs, a division justified by perceived natural characteristics, dictating each gender's suitability for specific roles. Women, viewed as morally superior yet physically weaker, were confined to the domestic sphere, reinforcing traditional gender hierarchies. Marriage and sexuality were heavily regulated, with women discouraged from appearing overly eager for matrimony to avoid any hint of their modesty. Upon marriage, women relinquished control over their rights and property to their husbands, highlighting the unequal power dynamics within marital unions. Upper-class women, buoyed by their social status and ample resources, oversaw households with the assistance of servants, while working-class women juggled manual labor with domestic chores, often relying on elderly or young caregivers to watch over their children in the absence of affordable childcare options. These stark class divisions underscored broader societal debates about women's roles in both the home and the workplace. Crime. At the dawn of the Victorian era, England grappled with rising crime rates, exacerbated by the societal pressures of the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't until 1829, with the introduction of Robert Peel's Metropolitan Police Act, that the groundwork for addressing this issue was laid. The establishment of the Metropolitan Police, headquartered at Scotland Yard, marked a pivotal shift from reliance on military and militia forces to a uniformed peacekeeping body tasked with maintaining order in the London metropolitan area. With the expansion of police jurisdiction over the following decades, crime rates began to decline as law enforcement efforts intensified. Penalties for criminal behavior ranged from imprisonment to capital punishment, supplemented by experimental treatments like isolation and Bible study. Despite these efforts, sensationalized crime reporting, particularly regarding cases like Jack the Ripper's gruesome murders of prostitutes in 1888, captivated public attention, fueling societal fascination with notorious criminals and violent acts. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons.